Hey folks, Papa Boris here with another tournament for the game Leaders. This was the first Hunter of Kings tournament. I don't know if there's any special story behind this one. It was a single elimination tournament using the normal drafting mode. We were up here against Elementum LBJ. I was the first player, and of course I'm going to take my beloved, my one, the only, my true love, the Royal Guard. And now my opponent is in a little bit of a weird spot. I do think I'm a little bit lucky in the draft. There's the Manipulator here, but the Manipulator is kind of a middling character unless you really know what you're doing, including like me being a pretty high-rated player. I feel like when I take the Manipulator, it's just not that impressive. I've had it be impressive against me by stronger players, but myself, you know, it's kind of a middling character if you don't know how to use it right. So my opponent, if this is not going to be an amazing character, has a Vizier in a top deck or a Rider in a top deck, but neither of them are exactly the kind of thing that you want to be drafting early. So with me getting the top tier Royal Guard and my opponent getting the top tier nothing, I felt like I was, you know, a little bit of at an advantage against this lower rated opponent. So my opponent moves, decides to grab the Vizier, which I think I would have done as well. A brick pops out, so again, a bit unlucky for my opponent. Grabs the Rider, which I would have done also. Now, to be fair, another sort of crappy character pops out here, the Protector. So I do get to move. This positioning, by the way, of the Royal Guard, of the Rider, is a little bit weird because your natural development move is blocked by the Royal Guard. I mean, you can still come down this way, which is totally fine. So there's not necessarily a mistake. But something to consider would have been to like put it here where it could go this way. I mean, it could also go from there. So you have the option of this space, but from the corner, you also have the option of this space. So you have some options. Whereas when you put it here and the opponent puts the Royal Guard in their natural spot, you kind of only have one option. All else being equal, I prefer to have multiple options. But on the other hand, I can kind of see where my opponent might have wanted to do this because how many options you have or not, from here, this is the closest you can get to the leader. There's a direct line here. This, I mean, it's kind of tricky how you measure closeness. That's also fairly close, I suppose. But of course, then the opponent could have chosen to put the Royal Guard here. And then, you know, then you maybe got your opponent to put the Royal Guard in a weirder spot, but your Rider himself doesn't have as good of a place to go. Anyway, just some minor stuff to think about when your opponent has the Royal Guard and you place the Rider. So now I decide to grab the Protector, just because that way, if a Bruiser gets top decked for me, then the Protector would help me have an unopposed Bruiser, and I just don't value the Manipulator that highly. Also, the Manipulator isn't very good if I have the Protector for my opponent. Now, of course, my opponent does get a good character. There's a lot of good stuff in the deck, so it's not too surprising that my opponent gets the Claw, and I think that evens out the luck a little bit. I think that with a Vizier, a Claw, and a Rider, my opponent has a perfectly reasonable squad. And for me, I'm kind of in top deck mode to see what good thing I can get. My opponent does a little bit of dancing here, leader showing off his moves, whoop, 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 and finally decides to stick it in the corner. It's not my favorite spot. Since your opponent just drafted a very lame piece that just moves one square at a time, there's really no reason not to keep the leader centralized. You're not gonna get checkmated from here. Obviously, that's easy to calculate. And with the Vizier especially, you want to keep your options open. On the other hand, I can maybe see my opponent actually getting some ideas of like, oh, well, let me see if I can use my leader maybe as like a checkmating piece in some cases. So there may be some aggressive intent behind this. Although if that's the case, then I think just putting the leader here makes a lot more sense. But okay, my opponent decides to just stick the leader in the corner and does take the Claw, obviously. A decent, though not like amazing piece shoots out for me, the Brewmaster. I decide to pull back my Royal Guard because with the draft going the way it's going, I'm not going to pull off any exciting stuff, and I value the Royal Guard here for being able to stop this Rider's advance. So this positioning here paying off, I decided just better to pull off my piece, even though I won't be able to get my Royal Guard back to the enemy leader very quickly. I think it's worth it as my opponent has, you know, 3 good pieces here, 2 top tier pieces and 1 very good supporting B tier piece. I decide just to limit it and play a little bit defensively here. Now, I put the Brewmaster in the corner, and I just don't know what the point of this is. I think it's a mistake. There's really no reason not to just put it near my leader so I can start using it right away. Or, you know, then I could, like, if I put it here, go here, and keep it near all my other pieces. The corner just, I don't think makes any sense whatsoever. So that's just a little bit of a misplay. And my opponent gets an Acrobat. So Elementum LBJ ends up winning this draft. It started off his first pick, you know, his big advantage as a second player, getting to draft 2 pieces at once. That was not very impressive. But After that, he got the Claw and the Acrobat, whereas I got the Protector and the Brewmaster, which are clearly not as good. And then an Archer pops out, so I am not getting any good pieces. There were things out there. There was an Illusionist out there, Hermit and Cub still out there, the Bruiser is still out there, heck, even a Wanderer. So I am forced to kind of play with middle tier jank against an opponent who, obviously these days, 241 isn't the same as it would have been worth a month ago. But still, I am up against it here. So I was very nervous at this point that I was going to get upset and knocked out in the first round of the tournament. Now, this move here with the guard is maybe a little bit timid because I could have summoned the guard here and stepped up there. It's not like it matters that there's this hole here, and that would have actually stopped the Acrobat from jumping in here. Maybe I thought that wasn't really worth it because the Vizier can go here and the Acrobat can jump here anyway, but Acrobat on the edge is not very good. So I really should have stopped this jump, and I don't really think there's any reason for me not to have. So I made a little misplay there, and then I grabbed the Manipulator. So now the idea is that I got this Manipulator along this diagonal, so if the Acrobat does jump here and the Rider moves, then I can babysit it. This is actually now a crucial moment in the game. So what I'd like you to do is pause for a second and think about what you would do here if you were my opponent. Because this is, the draft has just ended, a key strategic moment. All right, so let's talk about what's happening here. My opponent, coming right out of the draft, I've just drafted my last piece, clearly has drafted much better pieces and needs to press his advantage. I screwed up. I failed to block this Acrobat jump for absolutely no reason whatsoever. And my opponent has the opportunity to get the Acrobat clear across the board. So the move you want to make here is you actually pull the Rider back. Then you jump with the Acrobat here and here. After the Acrobat jumps, your pieces step up, forming this wall, smothering all of my pieces, making my Brewmaster pretty much useless. My Royal Guard is essentially a vanilla piece, and my Protector does nothing except for stop claw pulls, which, when the claw being part of the wall, is nothing. Yes, my Manipulator can pull. This is going to be an Acrobat at that point. My Manipulator can pull the Acrobat back. I could slide my conga line at that point, like this or something. But, it's one of those grinding wall-to-wall games. I do have a pretty effective Manipulator, I think, going along this diagonal where my opponent's wall is formed. It's a game. I'm not saying I lose instantly or my opponent wins instantly. But to me, looking at the position for a long time, that was the best thing that I could find. But maybe this is, where the difference is made for the lower-rated players. They know how to draft the right pieces. My opponent, I think, drafted just about flawlessly here, drafted all the exact same pieces I would have drafted, put them out in the opening in very good ways, got them positioned reasonably well, but he misses or maybe doesn't understand the value of that move that I just outlined. So what he decided to do is move up with the Rider. He doesn't move the Rider back to allow the Acrobat a bigger jump, and then he's like, okay, well, I still have a good jump with my Acrobat. I'm going to put my Vizier here, and I'm going to jump with my Acrobat down the side. So it looks like the Rider and the Acrobat are coming in, forming this sort of pincer maneuver. But looks are deceiving. With the draft having just ended and me seeming to be on the, losing side of the draft, we're going to see that the tune of the board changes immediately. My opponent keeps the leader on the edge a little further away from the Manipulator and passes the turn. Okay, now it's not the world's craziest puzzle, but you're black. This all seems very aggressive. It seems like these pieces are still kind of smothering your leader and that your opponent is putting you on the defensive. What do you do here? All right, I'm not saying this is like some crazy amazing move or anything like that, but in this position, we can turn things around immediately. I just drafted my last piece a move ago, and with the middle game being so fresh in existence, look how quickly everything turns around. First, I pull the claw off that way. I step in with my Protector and just slide my leader forward. Now, the Royal Guard can also step up, and the Brewmaster just moves. I don't need to do any crazy moves with the Brewmaster. I just form this big wad in the middle. And compare how different this position feels to the previous one. Previous one, my opponent had the opportunity to smother my pieces, form this wall, and make it very difficult for me to develop. Now, my opponent's pieces are the ones that are completely off to the side of the edge. They're totally out of position. The acrobat has no good jumps. He can jump back in the corner, but then he's biting on my royal guard here. And he doesn't have a way to put a piece here, which would have allowed him to, of course, jump his way to victory for checkmate if that had been available. But he doesn't have a way to put a piece there, so this acrobat on the edge of the board is basically useless. And so the manipulator, I could have, I used the manipulator, and then I moved every single piece. So yes, I moved every single piece. My turn is over. I have this great potential energy here with the Brewmaster can like kick my leader, and then the leader can summon the Royal Guard, maybe do some surprise checkmates in some lines. My opponent now moves back with the claw, runs with the leader to the center of the board, though, again, you have to think about possibly going in a more centralized spot, though in this case you actually can't, because the protector can move up, the leader can go here, summon a Royal Guard here, and then there's checkmate. And even if you try to block that with, say, the rider, the Brewmaster can give the extra movement needed in order to provide the checkmate. Let me take a second here. If the rider goes all the way back up like this, and the leader is here, then can you checkmate? Yes, because you can kick the leader here, then the leader moves here, Royal Guard summons here, steps in, protector steps in for checkmate, and the claw's already moved. Yeah, so the leader has to be on the corner now to avoid checkmate, thanks to the Brewmaster. The acrobat and the vizier just walk towards me, but the acrobat is, again, a little bit ineffective here. As long as I keep this spot held, there's no way for the acrobat to jump. There's no tricky jumps like this because the spot's blocked. And then there's no way for my opponent to ever put a piece here, which would have allowed him to do a jump with the acrobat there. Now, did he ever move his rider? He did not move his rider, so it's interesting. My opponent kept the rider here. Maybe moving the rider around the bottom would have made sense, so then the rider would stop my leader from going back this way. But then again, yeah, maybe not. If the rider were here, it could go here and give the acrobat a jump, but then my leader would be going out this way, so it wouldn't really change anything. So yeah, I think leaving the rider here or not is totally fine. So now I move my leader away from the acrobat, move the Royal Guard in through the crack, keep my Brewmaster in the middle, and this is actually a really deceptively dangerous position for my opponent. It's actually really, really difficult now for my opponent to stop checkmate because my leader kind of weirdly moved around above the rider. So at this point, keep in mind, there is a little bit of careful calculation that you have to do in order to make sure you don't lose, because if my opponent could have put a piece here, the acrobat could do a diamond jump and then actually checkmate my leader. So I had to check to make sure that this was impossible. My opponent could, of course, put the rider here, claw up to here, but the rider had to move then, so then the acrobat jumps here, and then no piece is touching my leader, so this is safe, but it's just something you have to be watchful of. So the thing is that in this situation, I can just put my protector here, move my leader, and summon the Royal Guard and come in for checkmate. So, okay, the Royal Guard, the claw can just go here. But the problem with that is that the Brewmaster can actually kick the protector, and the protector can move here. Then the leader can step in, Royal Guard summons here, and then the Royal Guard comes in for the smothering checkmate. So this leader is not safe, and it's actually really difficult for my opponent to stop checkmate because I can kick my Royal Guard into position, and then I can kick my protector into position to touch the leader, and then summon my Royal Guard in for the checkmate. So the fact that the Royal Guard is here is actually important, because what this does is it stops the leader from being able to go this way, since the Royal Guard can just move in for checkmate in that case. But if the leader goes the other way, even with the Vizier, it's not good enough, because the protector and the Royal Guard can teleport over to do the checkmate. I actually didn't see a way for my opponent to block checkmate here, but my opponent decided to try. By the way, I should mention that also, among other things, the Royal Guard and the Brewmaster are canceling the acrobat's jumps, so there's no way for the acrobat to do a giant diamond jump here to be defensive. My opponent does try putting the claw there, moves the acrobat, moves the Vizier, keeps the rider in place, but now comes the checkmate. Just make sure that you move things in the correct direction. If you put the protector here, you actually don't get the checkmate that way. I mean, you can still keep playing the game and probably will win, but if you want to checkmate right now, it has to go to the right, then step forward, the leader steps up, the Royal Guard summons in, and there is the suffocating checkmate. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. Please like and or subscribe, and I'll see you again soon. Take care.